At 19, she discovered an amazing secret after marrying a millionaire cowboy. His gift transformed her life forever. Sarah Fisher stood in the sprawling living room of her new home, glancing over the rustic elegance surrounding her. The walls of the ranch were adorned with trophies, framed memories of Jake McAllister's many victories in rodeos long past. But all she felt was an overwhelming sense of isolation. The laughter of rich Texan socialites echoed in her mind, blending with doubt. She was an outsider here, a simple country girl thrust into a world draped in opulence and gilded pretensions. Who was she amidst this wealth? Would they ever see her as anything but a country girl trying to play with the elite? The rain fell heavily that afternoon, drumming against the roof as Sarah rummaged through the attic. The dust danced in the shafts of light filtering through the window. Then, hidden beneath a tattered trunk, she found an old journal, its leather cover cracked with age. Curiosity consumed her. She opened it, revealing the delicate handwriting of Jake's grandmother, a woman whose artistic genius lay dormant in the shadows of her family's expectations. "I was always told my art was a frivolous pursuit," one entry read, the words bleeding sorrow and longing. It struck a chord deep within Sarah. Here was a woman who had lived a life defined by her talent, yet confined by societal norms. The pressure Sarah felt mirrored this aching legacy. Each stroke of her grandmother-in-law's brush echoed with Sarah's unexpressed desire to create. Yet, how could she cultivate her talent amidst the suffocating expectations placed upon her by those same socialites who dismiss her artistic dreams? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. As Sarah delved deeper into the journal, a mix of determination and anxiety gripped her heart. She decided to curate an exhibit showcasing her grandmother-in-law's hidden artwork. This could be her moment to shine, a way to honor a legacy while claiming her own. Yet the mounting whispers among the elite fueled her fear. What if they saw her as unworthy, someone who didn't belong? Those critical gazes, veiled threats cloaked in designer attire, haunted her thoughts, causing unease to ripple through her psyche. With every brushstroke on canvas that she practiced in secret, an internal battle raged. Who was she really? A proud artist, or just a shadow in Jake's grand world? Anxiety coiled tighter, and the painting she had unearthed, the long-lost masterpiece that could shatter years of silence, loomed over her. What if revealing it stripped her of the acceptance she craved? Sarah felt the weight of her decisions, a blend of excitement and dread knotting in her stomach. As the day of the exhibit approached, she stood at a crossroads. Would she expose the beautiful complexity of a past aching to be recognized? Or would she suppress her voice, surrender, and blend into a world that was never meant for her? The walls of her new life pressed in closer, and panic surged at the thought of losing everything. She had to confront not just the fickle society around her, but the truth she had discovered about herself, her art, her identity, all hinging on the precipice of fear. Sarah took a deep breath, knowing that the path ahead was fraught with heartache, and the fire to reclaim her truth burned bright within her. As the humid air pressed against her skin, Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The day of the exhibit loomed over her like a storm cloud, urging her to act, but simultaneously paralyzing her with dread. The journal lay open on the kitchen table, its pages whispering promises of validation and self-discovery, yet the weight of expectation threatened to crush her. The evening brought a gathering of affluence to the McAllister estate. This would be her chance to unveil her grandmother-in-law's art, but standing at the edge of the crowded ballroom felt like teetering on the edge of an abyss. Guests adorned in glamorous clothing laughed and exchanged stories, oblivious to the turmoil swirling within Sarah. She blended into the background, her heart racing in response to the warmth of affable smiles mixed with the sharp chill of judgment. "Have you met the new Mrs. McAllister?" Sarah overheard a well-tailored figure say, laughter accentuating his words. "I hear she's trying her hand at art. Isn't that adorable?" The laughter spurred a jolt of anger inside her. Adorable? The desire to create was not merely a whim, it was a facet of who she was.
How could she establish her worth when her burgeoning passion was viewed as a mere pastime? Determination flickered within her, igniting her nerves into action. No, she wouldn't let herself remain a spectator in her own story. With each moment that passed, she realized her dream deserved a platform, a voice beyond the muted expectations of others. There was a resolution brewing beneath her skin, and it urged her toward the grand staircase that overlooked the gathering. Hours melted away as she steeled herself before the stairs. Finally, with each carefully placed footstep, she took that leap, her heart thrumming with resolve. A hush fell upon the crowded hall as their curious gazes turned toward her. She was not merely Jake's wife. She was an artist, a dreamer, a storyteller waiting to be heard.
"Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice shaking but growing steadier with each word, "I have a story to share. It belongs to a woman who inspired me to pursue my own dreams, one brushstroke at a time." The words flowed, painting a vivid picture of Jake's grandmother and her denied legacy. Each phrase unveiled not just her struggle, but her resilience, transformed into something beautiful by the act of creation itself. Eyes widened, mouths dropped, and Sarah felt the rush of empowerment course through her as she described the creation of the exhibit. This was not just an understanding of art, it was an embrace of her identity. And woven into her narrative was the masterpiece she unearthed, the final piece of the puzzle. Standing in front of the canvas, waiting to be revealed, was the culmination of both her and the grandmother's unfulfilled dreams. As she swept the elegant drapery away, gasps erupted. The masterpiece shone vividly in the warm light, colors bursting forth like the expressions of those who had gathered. This painted ode was not about the pressures of their socialite lives. It was a dialogue of authenticity, a challenge to confront societal norms that suffocated creativity. But the murmurs soon crescendoed into whispers of skepticism. Critiques intermingled with uncertainty as the elite began to dissect the piece and her motivations. What if they deemed it unworthy? What if they questioned her right to share this intimate legacy? Each word became a dagger, poised to cut her dreams, as the acceptance she yearned for wavered. The tension in the room thickened, and Sarah's heart raced. It was then that she realized that this moment was about more than art. It was a reclamation of her identity. But the moment was still slipping from her grasp, the reactions pouring in, some admiring, others questioning. The floor beneath her felt unstable, like a mirage threatening to collapse. Would she remain steadfast, or would doubts drown out her voice? As she looked at the faces of the elite, it became painfully clear that her battle had just begun. There was no turning back. It was time to confront the nature of their judgment, time to reveal who she truly was. How could she navigate this maze of wealth and prejudice? As her trembling hands grasped the edge of the easel, she knew the real challenge lay ahead. The whispers echoed in her mind, but the fire to forge her own path blazed stronger than ever. And as the gaze of the attendees locked onto her, one bold question hung unasked in the air. What would she risk to claim her place in this new world, or would she let it swallow her whole? The weight of judgment lingered like heavy smoke in the air, constricting Sarah's breath and anchoring her to the spot. She scanned the ballroom, each face representing a flicker of doubt that threatened to extinguish the flame of her resolve. Yet buried within the swelling tide of uncertainty was a burgeoning determination.
It whispered to her, "This is not merely about acceptance or rejection. It is about creating a legacy that intertwines with her own aspirations." Turn your gaze inward, she thought, focusing on the essence of her journey instead of the facade of expectation around her. The whispers had become a cacophony, but beneath them she found clarity. It would be foolish to allow their perceptions to govern her worth as an artist. This was her moment to embrace vulnerability, to transform perceived ridicule into artistic expression. Taking a steadying breath, she lifted her chin, willing herself to rise above the murmurs. Every critique hurled her way sharpened her focus. She would not shy away, but take these judgments and reforge them into power. With newfound purpose pulsing in her veins, she turned back to the audience, her voice steady this time. "Art," she declared, "is not merely a mirror reflecting society, but a window into the soul of creation itself. If we dare to look beyond the surface, we find stories that must be told. My work speaks not only of my past, but of a shared struggle against invisibility." The atmosphere shifted. The audience, captivated by her renewed vigor, hushed to catch every word. Although skepticism lingered like an unwelcome guest, her authenticity sparked genuine interest.
The biting undertones of some critics dulled as they sensed the energy building around her narrative. She continued, "Every stroke of paint represents a battle won, a dream unfulfilled, and yes, a legacy reclaimed. This piece encapsulates the resilience of two women, a daughter and a grandmother, who dared to dream despite the weight of tradition." The notion of lineage struck a chord, revealing the common thread of aspiration that connected them all. The elite, once poised to undermine her artistic journey, began to shift their perceptions. As they leaned in, Sarah felt an unexpected surge of gratitude, a desire to open their eyes to the beauty hidden within struggle and the importance of authenticity. The evening unfolded as people approached her one by one, their initial skepticism giving way to genuine curiosity. Questions flowed like fine wine, each interaction grounding her in her decision to stand tall. They wanted to know about her process, her inspirations, and her connection with her grandmother-in-law's work. A gentleman, sharp-suited yet softened by genuine intrigue, spoke. "What do you want viewers to take away from this piece?" Releasing a breath she didn't know she was holding, Sarah considered her reply. "I hope they see that art isn't just a reflection of the beautiful. It is a testament to our imperfections, our truths. It provokes thought and incites change. I want them to question not only the piece but their own narratives, what stories are silenced within their own lives." With each response, she felt the misgivings that once bound her loosening, revealing a freedom she hadn't known she sought.
Those moments were illuminating. They gleamed like shimmering shards of glass, piecing together the mosaic of her creative identity. Even amid growing validation, a nagging doubt whispered from the shadows. Would the acceptance last beyond this room? The enduring nature of their judgments haunted her ambitions. Still, a resolve fortified her heart, urging her to prepare for the challenges that lay ahead. Conversations drained the knowledge from her, yet the realization that emerged was this: her art and her voice were intertwined, critical to her growth as both a woman and an artist. But just as a sense of triumph enveloped her, a piercing voice arose from the crowd, cutting through the developing camaraderie. Isn't it inappropriate for someone of her background to claim such a legacy? The sting of the words sliced deep, a sudden reminder of the criticisms awaiting her outside this grand ballroom. Every flicker of insecurity she'd managed to mend now threatened to unravel. In that moment, another question surfaced, unescapable. What had she truly sacrificed already, and what might she still be willing to risk to claim her identity and voice in an unforgiving world? With the weight of expectation crashing down once more, she steeled herself. The next step loomed. What would she reveal about her own fears and aspirations to weather this storm? The laughter and murmurs dulled around her, and Sarah felt the room constrict as she locked her gaze on the person who had spoken. The mockery on the man's face was unmistakable, a familiar arrogance that had always threatened to undermine her efforts. Instead of recoiling, she forced herself to breathe through the tension, searching for strength to respond. "I may not fit your definition of a legacy," she said, her voice steady, "but legacy isn't simply inherited. It's forged in the fires of experience and struggle." The audience shifted, their collective attention hanging on her words. She could feel the eyes of the critics narrowing, assessing her response. A flicker of doubt crept in, but she swatted it away. Today, she was not only defending her art, she was reclaiming her narrative. "Every legacy is birthed from hardship and evolution," she continued, committed to building a bridge of understanding. To dismiss an artist because of an unremarkable lineage is to deny the very essence of what art is meant to do, transform pain and triumph into something beautiful. An uncomfortable silence enveloped the room, and Sarah reveled in the moment, her heartbeat synchronizing with the rhythm of her growing confidence. She wasn't merely speaking to defend herself, she was propagating a philosophy that resonated beyond her own experiences. Each word felt charged with purpose, and she leaned into it, feeling empowered. But why should any of us control the narratives in which we belong? Let us not separate ourselves into castes based on family or wealth. Let us be willing to walk beside each other through our shared vulnerabilities. Isn't that what makes art universal? The audience reacted, and some exchanged contemplative glances, while others displayed hesitance at her boldness. The sharp-suited gentleman hovered closer, curious instead of judging. Seeing his interest, Sarah pressed on, adopting the approach of a storyteller unraveling her truth. Imagine a young girl learning to paint with nothing but old scraps of fabric and a hope borrowed from another generation. that girl found the courage to leap into something grander than herself. That girl is me. I am here not simply to show you colors on a canvas. I'm here to show you the tapestry of emotions and the legacy that transcends family expectations. I'm here to create new narratives. With every word, she fortified her resolve. The cacophony of judgment faded to whispers, and she could finally hear the melody of her own aspirations clearly. The notions of inadequacy that once loomed large began to shrink, exposing the heart of what she had to offer. It was time to confront those doubts that festered, time to draw strength from her heritage and her experiences. Yet in the space she carved, a deeper fear emerged, one she had long pushed into the recesses of her mind. What if validating her own narrative undermined the authenticity of the story she wished to portray? Could she truly shoulder the burden of transformation without diluting her own truths? As she navigated that complex domain, shadows flickered in her mind. The unresolved pain of loss, the persistent memories of struggle, and the fear of failure that threatened to stifle her voice. The arch of her story hung precariously, teetering between the clarity she sought and the doubts that threatened to ensonce her once again. Before leaving the stage, she took a moment to breathe, grounding herself. The next step demanded not just courage, but an embraced vulnerability, a risk to dig deeper into the layers of her identity, even as the shadows loomed large. Art is also about discomfort, she declared, meeting the eyes of her critics head-on. It's about delving into the places that scare us and transforming those fears into something profound. Who among you is ready to confront the unspoken truths within? And with that, Sarah left the stage, her heart racing. Decisions loomed before her, filled with potential revelations. The whispers of judgment would not cease, but now they felt like an invitation rather than a condemnation. What was she willing to unveil about herself next, and would it solidify her as an authentic artist, or unravel the very threads she fought so hard to weave? The crossroads awaited her at dawn. In the quiet of the following morning, Sarah stared at her paintbrush, the bristles dripping with vibrant hues, each color a reminder of yesterday's confrontation.
The sunlight filtering through her studio's window illuminated her workspace, creating a halo effect that danced on her canvases. Each stroke she had made felt like a declaration, bold, defiant, and yet filled with an ever-present vulnerability. With every lingering hesitation, she was aware that the burden of self-discovery loomed larger than any external judgment. The previous day's fierce proclamation had carved a new path into her soul. Art was discomfort, she had said, yet the echo of her words brought both excitement and trepidation. What if this new understanding led her further into depths she feared to tread? Scenarios cascaded through her mind, the potential for ridicule, the risk of exposing too much, and the possibility of losing herself in the emotional labyrinth of creation. Determined to unravel these fears, she decided that revealing her own story was not an act of vulnerability, but an act of power. Sarah's fingers glided over the textured surface of the canvas as she considered her next piece, stripped of excess, raw, and honest. This was no longer just about aesthetics. It was a connection to her own past, her struggles, her uncertainties, and the beauty forged through survival. She dipped her brush into a deep, rich crimson, the color pulsating with the emotion she thought long buried. As she worked, memories flooded her, the long nights spent practicing, the rejections, but also the flashes of inspiration found in the mundane. Sarah realized that to create authentically, she needed to face a truth that had haunted her, her father's disapproval, stemming from a long line of artists who had failed to achieve acclaim. Would unveiling this tension in her work serve to honor her past or betray it? The question gnawed at her, but acknowledging it felt freeing. Art at its core was about authenticity, and she had decided it was time to unleash her hidden depths. As she meticulously layered her paints, reminiscent of the struggles that formed her, a thought struck her. What if she invited her audience into her world, not as passive observers, but as active participants? This would be her chance to ask them to confront their own shadows. What lay beneath the surface of their own lives? Could they resonate with the rawness she sought to portray? The idea ignited a fire within her. To turn her vulnerabilities into an exploration of collective discomfort could elevate her artistry to a new level. It was then that the contours of her next exhibition came into focus, each piece a specific chapter in her narrative, inviting others to reflect on their own experiences and distill their pain into something beautiful. However, this new path was undeniably daunting. Self-doubt resurfaced, casting its long shadow over her ambitions. What if her exploration didn't resonate?
What if it led her to an even harsher criticism? With each stroke, she balanced on the precipice of self-acceptance and acceptance from others.
She could almost hear the subtle whispers of the audience from the previous day, threading through the silence of her studio. Were they ready to expose their truths alongside hers? Seeking courage, she took a deep breath. The decision to invite others into her vulnerability required not just bravery, but a deep commitment to authenticity. Emboldened by that thought, Sarah dipped her brush in bright yellow, a beacon of hope against the darker undertones she had laid. She began to outline figures entwined in her narrative, shapes that sought connection amidst chaos. The bright strokes danced together, a pointed reminder that even pain could yield joy, love, and growth. As the colors began to blend and weave into a tapestry of emotion, a strange sense of calm enveloped her. The purpose behind her art was crystallizing, yet the questions lingered. What unexpected revelations lurked in the canvases she had yet to create? Would she find new layers of resilience hidden within her own expressions, or would the art resist her attempts to reveal, offering instead a confrontation with the very fears she sought to uncover? The moment of truth approached, and Sarah felt the pulse of creation thrumming through her veins. The vulnerability she previously dreaded was becoming her greatest tool. What would the world see next in her unfolding story? The rhythmic brush strokes painted not just the canvas, but also a path into Sarah's psyche, revealing layers of anxiety shot through with bursts of determination. Each figure she painted, each line she drew, gave rise to a familiar tension. They stood for the truths she had long buried beneath layers of self-doubt. Truths about her identity as a daughter, an artist, and a woman yearning for recognition and acceptance. Yet with every stroke of hopefulness in bright yellow came waves of insecurity. Would her audience truly embrace the complexity she sought to share? Her father's words echoed sharply in her mind, warnings of failure, taunts of inadequacy. Would they see her art as trivial, or, worse, a cry for help? Her heart raced as she fought against the desire to retreat into the safety of familiar emotions, a pattern she had known for far too long. Sarah stepped back to survey her work. The canvas pulsed with life. Under the stark colors lay a vulnerability that was fierce and yet precarious. She could almost taste the anticipation in the air, not just for the exhibition, but for something much deeper, an awakening. Trapped within the confines of her self-imposed limitations, she questioned the permanence of her fear. With a mixture of dread and exhilaration, she decided to push through. She recalled a conversation with her friend Emily, a bold performance artist who had challenged all conventions in her work. "Art isn't meant to be pretty, Sarah," she had insisted. "It's meant to shake people awake, make them feel something, anything. Your truth is your strength."
Those words echoed in her mind, stoking the embers of her courage. It was time to make a statement, to draw from the well of her past rather than skirt around it. Inspiration struck once more. She turned the brush to darker shades, layering depth onto her piece, a metaphor for shadows lurking, not just in her past, but also within her current self. Sarah started to engage with these elements, transforming the chaos into a chaotic beauty, expressing the unresolved conflict of wanting to be heard while fearing she'd never be understood. Sudden clarity washed over her. The figures in her work began to embrace imperfections. They cried, laughed, and wove a narrative of healing that resonated with acceptance instead of fear. She wasn't just a participant in her story, she was the author, reclaiming her narrative. But then a sudden thought gripped her. Was she ready to create something that might evoke controversy or challenge perceptions? What if her truth became a battleground where she would have to defend herself against critics, or worse, individuals who might dismiss her rawness entirely? As she began to apply the finishing touches, that sense of impending confrontation loomed larger. The idea of sharing her deepest scars was both liberating and terrifying. Would her audience see the nuances she embedded in colors? Could they perceive the struggle, the growth wrapped in vivid strokes? Sarah's excitement was tainted with an unsettling anxiety that threatened to spiral inward. The impending exhibition served as both launchpad and crucible,
a deconstructive moment where her art would either soar or plummet. Each brushstroke carried the weight of expectation, while the upcoming reveal stirred a whirlwind of emotions deep within her. Could this be the breaking point where she would finally embrace her identity, transcending the barriers she had always known? As the last line was drawn, she felt a flicker of hope ignite within her. The moment was here, yet a nagging uncertainty clung stubbornly to her heart. That night, sleeping beneath the undeniable weight of her creations, a thought gnawed at her. What if the echoes of her past came knocking, challenging her newfound confidence just as she stood on the verge of revelation? Morning light pierced through the curtains, illuminating the scattered remnants of the night, the paint tubes, brushes, and an unfinished canvas that lay in wait. Sarah stirred, feeling hungover from restless dreams filled with swirling colors and unresolved fears. The weight of her creations bore down on her psyche, as if they were a living testament of her struggle, demanding her attention. Her reflection in the bathroom mirror revealed dark circles under eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. She felt the pull of impending change. There was an urgency that crackled in the air. Taking a deep breath, she began to scrub away the remnants of yesterday, the self-doubt that clung to her skin. Today, she would choose clarity over chaos.
Determined to assuage her anxiety, Sarah set out to work in her studio, each step driven by a growing resolve. The canvas awaited her like a stage yearning for its lead performer, and she wanted to give it a dazzling debut. It was in her very hands to translate the amalgam of storms brewing within her into a symphony of colors. She chose to fracture her routine, experimenting with techniques she had long admired in the works of others. Mixing mediums, layering textures, and integrating collage elements, she set forth on what felt like an exhilarating leap into unknown territory. The canvas transformed before her eyes, shifting under her hands, an evolving mass of expression that felt increasingly alive. Curiosity blossomed within her, pushing her to extend her artistic boundaries further than she ever dared before. She filled her space with chaos. The sight of paint splatters on the floor mirrored the tumult of emotions writhing within her. Instead of recoiling, she embraced the uncertainty, dancing alongside her fears and channeling them into her work. At that moment, she discovered the thrill hidden in embracing imperfection, and that the act of creation itself was a victory over internalized criticism. Amid the tumult, she struck an unexpected chord with herself. Ideas flowed with unprecedented clarity as she interwove personal tales into her brushstrokes. Each figure depicted encapsulated a facet of her journey: the daughter striving for approval, the artist battling rejection, and the woman longing to be seen. Sarah realized that vulnerability was not her weakness, but the bedrock of her power. However, a lingering question hung like fog in the back of her mind. Would this newfound expression truly resonate with an audience? What if they failed to understand the intricacies of her world? What if response hovered around apathy rather than engagement? The familiar shadows of fear threatened to drown her newfound resolve. As the sun dipped lower, casting warm hues across the studio floor, Sarah found herself at a crossroads. A sudden surge of vulnerability paralyzed her as she stood before her canvas. The fierce depth that she sought was also a sword's edge, capable of cutting both ways. Would she strip away her armor of fear to stand bare and exposed before the world? In that moment, she felt a flicker of defiance. The thought of retreat demanded to be confronted. If criticism awaited, then so be it. Her voice would not be silenced. As she mixed colors on her palette, she vowed to navigate the storm of the criticism she feared. The truth would be laid bare, no matter the consequences. With each stroke, Sarah forged ahead, transforming the uncertainty into a palpable sense of purpose. She would not allow her past or her father's disapproval to dictate her future. Instead, she would invite the world into her struggle, a dance of vulnerability and strength. And as the final hues settled onto the canvas, she sensed her spirit lifting, like a butterfly unfurling from its cocoon. But the truth of emotional battles ahead loomed large. Would she be ready to confront the reactions that awaited her, or would those echoes of self-doubt rise to embrace her anew in her moment of triumph? In this crucible of revelation, only time would tell. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Sarah found solace within her studio, briefly lingering in the soft aftermath of her labor. The dazzling hues of her recent creation caught the light just so, revealing layers of meaning she had poured herself into with reckless abandon. Standing there, she allowed her heart to swell with pride, feeling the stubborn pulse of her identity merge seamlessly with the strokes of her brush. Yet the suffocating weight of anticipation began to smother the exhilaration she'd felt moments before. The impending unveiling of her work loomed ahead, a specter that refused to be ignored. Was she truly ready for the scrutiny that awaited? Questions needed answers, and the only way to find them lay in confronting her audience. Determined to gather her thoughts, she took a seat on her weathered stool, her gaze transfixed on the canvas. This was not just an artwork, but a representation of her deepest fears and ambitions. Every errant splash, every calculated stroke danced together as a testament to her evolution. Could she share this piece of herself with others? The question twisted within her like a knife. Alone, she replayed her motivations, recalling the countless hours spent perfecting her craft, interwoven with the painful memories of self-doubt. Sarah envisioned herself walking into a gallery, each step feeling weighty and profound, confronting murmurs of criticism that threatened to drown her voice. She felt trapped between the desire for approval and the fear that it might never come. With resolve, Sarah began to jot down her thoughts in a tattered notebook, its pages brimming with ideas, sketches, and verses that mirrored her artistic spirit. Pouring her anxieties onto paper was cathartic, yet each inked word felt simultaneously liberating and binding. If she wanted to invite them into her world, she couldn't simply allow them to view a piece of art. She needed to craft a narrative that spoke to them, the story behind the swirls of color and imagery. As night cloaked the room, she dove deeper into her memories, confronting the ghosts that had haunted her for too long. The disappointment in her father's eyes after she chose art over a safer path, the whispers of friends who failed to understand her passion, and the internal battle against the feeling of never measuring up. Each recollection fueled her resolve, pushing her closer to a decision she needed to make. The next day, she scoured the local art community, seeking places to showcase her work. Each empty gallery she entered filled her with dips of hope and despair. There lay a raw, burgeoning potential, but so did the risk of rejection. Yet with each rejection, she found herself inching further beyond her comfort zone, as if each no summoned the courage needed to leap into something unexpected. Late that afternoon, exhausted but determined, Sarah composed an email addressed to a local gallery owner known for their progressive embraces of emerging artists. She shared a heartfelt narrative, capturing her artistic journey and the story behind her latest creation. She hit send with trembling fingers, bracing for a response that could tip the scales of possibility into a new direction. As she lay in bed that night, the once distant idea of presenting herself to the world morphed into an electrifying certainty. She envisioned layers of support and connection waiting for her beyond the clutches of fear. However, another unsettling thought stirred within her, gnawing at her consciousness. What if they saw through her facade and confirmed her worst fears about her art? What if they turned her vulnerability against her, shattering her newfound confidence? Now, with her heart racing, she knew she was approaching the precipice of change. Sarah was on the verge of a journey that would forge her identity, challenge her vulnerabilities, and perhaps illuminate hidden strengths she had yet to discover. The response awaited her, and it held the power to either propel her forward or lead her back into shadows she fought to escape. But this time, retreat was not an option. Would she have the courage to transform doubt into resilience when the answers arrived? A moment of revelation was on the horizon, inching closer with every heartbeat. Sunlight streamed through the studio window, revitalizing Sarah as she awoke to yet another day filled with anticipation. She instinctively reached for her phone, her heart pounding as she envisioned the response from the gallery owner. The weight of her dreams lightened, only to be replaced with an unsettling heaviness. What if the email had vanished into the void of cyberspace? The thought sent ripples of anxiety twisting through her. Determined to take control, she prioritized her day. There was more to her life than waiting for her reply. There were canvases waiting for her touch, and ideas yearning for exploration. She stepped into her paint-smeared sneakers and threw on an old oversized shirt, fortified by the possibilities of creation. Settling into her workspace, she turned her attention to a blank canvas that had been taunting her for weeks. Each day spent staring at it had become an exercise in frustration and self-doubt. This time, however, she decided to free herself from the weight of expectation. She would paint for herself, without concern for others' eyes or judgments, simply allowing her instincts to guide her. With a determined stroke of her brush, Sarah invited vibrant colors to dance across the canvas, her earlier hesitations evaporating like morning mist.
It was as if a dam had burst. The colors poured forth as raw emotion surged with every movement. She expressed feelings long stifled, the joy of tiny victories, the sting of lingering regrets, the exhilaration of recognition. Her brushwork became more passionate, her heart beating in tandem with her creative flow. Yet, amid the colorful frenzy, a quiet voice crept back in, whispering doubts that clung like shadows.
She paused, splashes of paint dripping down the canvas before her. Was this piece enough? Did it communicate the essence of who she had become? Frustrated, she took a step back and surveyed her work. This was not merely the product of her skill or artistry, but a counterpoint to the fears that clung to her. She realized then that perhaps revealing her vulnerabilities to the world could forge deeper connections, not lessen her credibility. The path to authenticity lay entwined with honest expression. A sudden vibration interrupted her thoughts. She hastily grabbed her phone, breathless and hopeful. The gallery owner had replied. Her heart raced, a whirlwind of trepidation unfurling within her. With shaking hands, she opened the email. "Dear Sarah," it began. The words blurred together as she scanned for the key takeaway. Did they appreciate her story, her art? Then a glimmer caught her breath, a request for an in-person meeting to discuss her work. Her heart soared. They recognized her potential. The relief brought clarity. This meeting was a monumental step, and she knew it would demand her to fully confront her inner critic. Prepared to face it, she realized the need to articulate her narrative clearly, to own her creative identity unapologetically. Her artistry was no longer just an act of defiance against her fears, it was an invitation to connection and conversation. That evening she composed her thoughts, boiling her narrative down to its essence. What did she want to convey? Why was this art important to her? Each word flowed like paint on canvas, revitalizing her spirit as she embraced the idea of vulnerability as a strength. As she worked through every line, she discovered a wellspring of confidence. However, the next day loomed before her, the session with the gallery owner both exhilarating and frightening. Would she truly have the courage to expose her artistic soul? Sarah felt empowered, yet a voice in the back of her mind flickered doubts like an errant flame. Perhaps this was just another step into unknown waters, one that might irrevocably change her artistic path. As she set aside her notebook, she felt an exhilarating mix of anticipation and fear. Tomorrow would not merely be about presenting her work, it would be a revelation of self. And as she drew in a steadying breath, Sarah knew that she was ready to confront whatever awaited her. The day of the meeting dawned bright and fresh, a stark contrast to the whirlwind of emotions swirling within Sarah.
Standing before the mirror, she felt both a rush of confidence and an undercurrent of vulnerability that threatened to shake her resolve. Dressed in a simple yet elegant outfit that signified her transition from uncertainty to self-assurance, she weighed every detail of her appearance. This was not merely about presentation, it was about transformation. As she drove to the gallery, memories of her journey flickered like slides in a projector. Each brushstroke and struggle had led her to this pivotal moment. The implicit fear of rejection loomed large, yet for the first time she chose to embrace it, recognizing that the burden of judgment did not define her worth. Instead, it was her authentic expression that held the power to invite others into her world. Entering the gallery, the crisp scent of fresh paint mingled with the promise of unknown possibilities. Sarah's pulse quickened, the sleek white walls carried an air of expectation, and she was struck by the realization that she was no longer just the country girl trying to fit in, she was an artist claiming her space. Seated across from the gallery owner, she immediately sensed an air of anticipation in the room. They exchanged greetings, and Sarah felt her nerves lighten as she began to discuss her work. "What inspires me most," she began, "is the duality of struggle and beauty. Each piece reflects not just personal battles, but a shared human experience." With each word, she saw their interest grow. She articulated the threads of her narrative that intertwined her artistic identity with her grandmother-in-law's legacy. The gallery owner nodded, engaged, and she felt a surge of empowerment course through her. This was not merely a presentation, it was an intimate dialogue about who she was and what her art stood for. As Sarah revealed her latest creation, each layer representing the complexities of identity and expectation, she felt the weight of doubt dissipate. "Art has the power to provoke, to awaken, and transform," she asserted, her voice steady. "I want to challenge the perceptions of lineage and success, showing that true legacy is forged in overcoming adversity, not merely inherited." The owner leaned back, eyes sparkling with understanding. "This is a powerful message. We need artists who stir conversation and incite thought," they responded. Sarah felt the tension within her dissipate, replaced by a palpable connection, a sense of belonging she had long sought. Weeks sped forward, and Sarah found herself preparing for the opening of her exhibition. Around her studio, canvases adorned with her vibrant narratives felt like an extension of her essence. She had transformed anxiety into art and vulnerability into strength. As the day approached, messages of anticipation from friends and art enthusiasts flooded in, offering not just support but validation. Each conversation deepened her resolve, and the opening night buzzed with energy.
When the evening arrived, Sarah stood before a crowd eager to explore her creations, an artist ready to unveil her raw truth. The hum of chatter surrounded her, alive with excitement and curiosity. As she welcomed them,
she felt the first stirrings of genuine confidence. "Tonight is about more than art. It's about understanding the complexities of our stories," she began. "Each stroke represents the courage to confront our identities and the journey to reclaim our narratives." As guests moved through the gallery, awe and admiration floated in the air. Their engagement transformed uncertainty into validation. Art dealers, collectors, and artists approached her with enthusiasm, their eyes widened with curiosity. "Your work speaks volumes," one exclaimed, while another marveled at the emotional depth threaded through her paintings. Each compliment felt like a seed being planted in fertile ground, a recognition of her evolution. And then, as if the universe recognized her need for affirmation, the gallery owner approached her on stage. "We'd love to feature your work nationally," they announced, igniting a spark of disbelief in Sarah. The very dream that once felt so far away began to crystallize into reality. In that moment, she realized how far she had come from the uncertain girl hidden among opulence. No longer just a shadow in her millionaire husband's world, she was recognized for her artistry, her voice, and the legacy she had chosen to embrace. Clarity washed over Sarah, a profound understanding that her journey was not just about acceptance, but about triumphing over adversity while embracing the narratives that shaped her. She had fulfilled not just an artistic dream, but had unearthed the strength to celebrate her identity unapologetically. As the night wound down with laughter and joy, Sarah stood at the edge of her gallery, a solid confidence echoing within her. She had achieved more than outward recognition. She had conquered her fears, embraced her vulnerabilities, and solidified her identity as an artist. The whispers of doubt had transformed into declarations of self-worth. She knew now she had created a legacy imbued with authenticity, one that invited others to confront their own truths while allowing her the freedom to redefine her place in the world. And with that new dawn upon her, Sarah was ready, not just to share her art, but to invite others into profound conversations about their lives. In the space of vulnerability and courage, she accomplished her greatest triumph. She had become exactly who she was meant to be. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.